and welcome to episode 2 of the Trans 101 series. Today, we are going to be talking about terms. Terms that are talked about a lot in the trans community, as well as terms that you really shouldn't be using and what type of phrasing you should actually be using when you refer to trans people and talk about trans things and stuff like that. So let's get to it. What is the difference between sex and gender? A lot of people use these words interchangeably and they are really not the same thing, all right? The most basic explanation that I have ever seen in my entire life online is sex is what is between your legs and gender is what is between your ears. We can complicate that a little bit more and say that sex is what you were assigned at birth. Somebody saw your genitals and they saw a penis and they said, oh my God, that's a boy. And gender is how one feels in their mind. So when you talk about trans people, you're saying that transgender individuals, all right, their gender does not match the sex that they were assigned at birth. Gender is more about how you feel inside and what your gender identity is. Sex is just a biological construct that was given to you when you were born. And the actual concept of sex is also socially constructed because we are here in this video series, we're just talking about trans people, but you have to remember that intersex individuals exist as well. So there are two sets of genitals that everyone knows about. You have a penis or you have a vagina. That's what you have. But there are people who are born intersex. Being intersex basically means that you were born with ambiguous genitalia. So if you're talking about sex and you're just attributing sex to penis or vagina, it doesn't work. It's socially constructed because there are a bunch of people out there who were born with ambiguous genitalia. And it's not as rare as everyone thinks it is. A lot of people. And it's not that the external genitalia can be ambiguous. It can be the inside as well. There could be somebody who was born with a penis but has an ovary. It could be somebody who was born with a vagina but has a very large clitoris. There are so many different variations of what ambiguous genitalia, external and internal, can mean that a lot of people don't even know that they are intersex. So just saying that there's only two types of genitals, penis and vagina, is very problematic because there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't have those. Trying to finish that sentence. Or who have those but in a different variation. Alright, so I'm just giving you an example of what sex is and then what gender is. What is gender expression? Well, this is very simple and I can use myself as an example over here. So I have said this before, I am a female to male trans person. I have a gender identity that is male. But the way that I express my gender is very different, all right? As you can see, I have dyed hair, I have colored nails, and I talk a lot with my hands, and a lot of people attribute the way that I express myself in a very feminine way, in whatever society deems is feminine. So for me, my gender expression is, yes, masculine, but more feminine. And that's okay. Even though I know I identify as male, I am allowed to be feminine. Just think about all the people who are not trans, who are feminine, and express their gender or express themselves in a feminine manner. A lot of people would associate that with flamboyant gay men. But it is a very narrow way of thinking because there are straight men who also express themselves in a more feminine way. And that's allowed. And it's allowed for me as a trans man to also express myself in a feminine way. This is just how I express myself. People want to deem it feminine, then that's fine. Sexual orientation. Now this one is very interesting because a lot of people tend to attribute being trans to sexual orientation as if it is, yes, it is part of the LGBT acronym, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, but it is not a sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is completely different. I read online once and it was very interesting that gender identity is who you want to go to bed as and sexual orientation is who you want to go to bed with. That is the most simple way to explain it. Sexual orientation is who you are attracted to. It has absolutely nothing to do with your gender identity, your gender expression, how you identify who you are. If you are a trans man, which means you were assigned female at birth and you transitioned to appear more male because you have always felt male inside. Before you transitioned, all right, if you solely dated women, you were seen as a lesbian. When you transition, you are now seen as a straight man. Sexual orientation does not change when you transition. Just the identity that is placed onto you will change, but the people you are attracted to doesn't normally change. Yes, there are some people in this community that say that transition has changed your sexual orientation. My theory on this is that people are way more comfortable with their bodies and are way more able to express themselves and let themselves feel things that they didn't feel before because they are way more comfortable in their body. So if somebody identified solely as a lesbian before and then they transitioned and they are now straight, but now they start feeling feelings for men, that's okay. That's absolutely okay, because now you are more comfortable with your body and you're able to express yourself more. So you not only date women as a straight man, you can now date men as well, and you would be seen as either gay, bisexual, pansexual, queer, however you want to identify yourself. I keep using the word trans man, I didn't even explain it. Okay, trans man is me. I was assigned female at birth and I transitioned to male. Alright? Trans woman is somebody who was assigned male at birth and transitioned to female. And when I say transition to female, I mean in an appearance. It's not their mind that transitioned, because inside, your gender has always been the gender that you identify as. I have always been male. My whole life I've been male. I just didn't look male, and what society sees is what male is. So I transitioned to a more male appearing body, I guess is what I could say. So what is cisgender? I keep seeing this word around. What does it even mean? Well, cisgender, plain and simple, just means that you're not trans. So if you're not trans, you're cisgender. If you're trans, you're transgender. Very, very simple. Please don't take it as an insult, because it's not. It's just a very easy way for us to discuss people who are trans and people who are cisgender. This is not a new term. It's been around for a very long time. I'll put links in the description below so that you can take a look. I know this is a lot of information to take in and it might be a little bit confusing. In the link in the description below, I will link you what the gender unicorn is. Alright, and I will place the picture here so that you know what I'm talking about. This will explain to you in depth the difference between sexual orientation, gender identity, gender, sex, and all of these other terms that I've talked about. They explain it in a way easier way than I do, because I tend to ramble. Alright, terms not to use. Trans people are not cross-dressers. Cross-dressing is different, alright? Cross-dressing is when you identify as male and you are wearing women's clothing, all right? And then they identify themselves as a cross-dresser. It is not the same thing. Somebody who is assigned male and transitions to a more feminine appearing look and is wearing more feminine clothing is not cross-dressing. Cross-dressing implies that you're dressing with the other gender in mind. You are basically cross-dressing your whole life before you transition. My whole life before transition, I was expected to wear more feminine clothes. When I wore those clothes, I felt like I was cross-dressing. I felt like this clothes does not match who I am inside. Saying something like a transgender or oh, she's a trans, that doesn't make sense. That's like saying, hey, that person's a gay. That doesn't roll off the tongue nicely, and it also really objectifies the person. Instead, you would say something like, oh, Chase is transgender. Oh look, I know somebody who's transgender. Not, I know somebody who's a transgender. Why can't you use transgendered? Well, there are some people who use it in a way like, oh look, I know Katie, she's transgendered. Excuse me? She transgendered? No. Katie transitioned because she is transgender. I'm not very good at grammar. My first language isn't English, so I have a little difficult time sometimes. But I do know that only a verb can be added an ed at the end, which means that being transgender is an action, or being transgendered is an action. It's not an action. You don't transgender. That's not what it is, and that's why using the word transgendered is not appropriate. You should be using the word the person is transgender and they are transitioning, instead of using they transgendered or they are transgendered. And this is the same thing with the word transgenders. No, you can say, oh, that group of people, they are transgender. They're not transgenders, they are transgender. All right, so the words that I'm about to say are very problematic and I really don't like using them, and these are words that I never use, but I just want everyone to be clear and make sure that they don't use this word. Right, so before I had talked about cross-dressers, a lot of people still called cross-dressers transvestites, or call trans people transvestites. This is different. Transvestite, I believe, is the older term for what is now known as cross-dressing, which I explained before. And this is my least favorite word in the entire world, and I never say it, and I hate when people say it, but I'm about to say it just one time in my life, and then I'll never say it again. The word tranny. Please do not use this word. This is one of the most offensive words that trans people can be called. It is objectifying, it is dehumanizing, and I know that this was a term that was commonly used a long time ago, and some people still use it. But as far as I know, almost everyone that I have ever talked to absolutely despises this word. It is used as an insult. If you watch any show in the 90s that had a trans person, SVU, Law and Order SVU, if they're mentioning a trans person, they're saying this word. So if anybody ever tells you, oh, please don't say the T word, now you know what the T word is. This word affects a lot of people in the trans community, but it really affects trans women and trans women of color. I can't speak to their experiences because I am obviously not a trans woman and I am obviously not a trans woman of color, but This word has been used to dehumanize and laugh at trans people. And if you watch any of these TV shows, it's always trans women that are being laughed at. So when you're laughing at somebody who is trans and you're using this word and the person is a trans woman, you are now seeing them as an object. When you look at the statistic of how many trans women, especially trans women of color, are murdered every single year, all right, because people do not see trans women as real humans. They see them as objects and they are dehumanized. They're not human. And how is that? How does that happen? Well, you have the media that portrays a trans person as a joke, as a punchline, as a criminal, as a villain, or as dead. All of these things combined influence individuals. I'm not blaming the media, all right, for killing trans women, because it's not the media that killed trans women. But I'm just saying that all of these images that are depicted and all of these words that are used against trans women especially is a very, in my opinion, a very large correlation in why a lot of trans women, especially trans women of color, are murdered. Please look that up. I will put the link in the description below. I can't believe I said that word. Anyways, here is a phrasing that a lot of people think is appropriate to use for trans people. I'm just gonna say it right out, it's not. Don't say, oh, you used to be so pretty before. Before what? Before I transitioned? Before, when I didn't feel like who I am, and before I was very, very emotionally distressed and had a lot of issues with myself? It's not a compliment. I know that a lot of people think it's a compliment, but it's really not. And then a lot of people think that this is a compliment. Oh my God, I would have never known if you didn't tell me. Well, a lot of people don't want to tell people that they're trans. And if you're saying that I would have never known, that kind of says that you expect a trans person to look a specific way. And because you weren't able to, I don't know, realize or clock or identify that person as trans, like as if we are lying and we are going through this world not telling people that we're trans, and that is lying. This is untrue. Some people just don't want to tell people that they're trans, and that's fine. So saying things like, oh my God, I would have never known. Yeah, you can think that it's a compliment because like, oh my God, you actually pass as who you are. That's so great. But it really does imply that you know what a trans person is supposed to look like. And there is no such thing as what a trans person is supposed to look like. Anyways, these terms just scratch the surface. There is so much more to learn, but these are the most basic things that I could think of that affect trans people and I get the most questions about. So if you have any questions, please put in the description below. I think it is very important that we keep this conversation open and we keep talking about all of these things. If you have any terms that you'd like me to talk about, I will put them in the description below. Like I said, there are a couple of videos that have a lot of different terms that you can learn about the trans community, the queer community, LGBT, that I will put in the link in the description below. These videos are very important as well. All right, thank you for joining me, and I will see you for episode 3 where I talk about transgender children. Have a great day.